Hi everybody, Paul Gottsegen from ISG. Happy to be joined here by Sudhir Chaturvedi from NTT Data, one of the key leaders there of a very large organization that has an even larger parent organization, and they've made some massive investments in AI as they continue to accelerate their leadership in helping organizations grow and embrace technology transformation. So Sudhir, great to have you here in Miami at our Executive Provider Summit.
Pleasure.
And let's get into it. As you're talking to clients and seeing trends, what are the big aspects of AI that are going to go mainstream as we're starting 2026, what's going to go mainstream as we go throughout the year?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a question I get asked by a lot of clients as to where they should invest their time and their money in right now. And I think I was actually pleasantly surprised, or positively surprised when I saw Steve's keynote talking about the autonomous enterprise, because that's something we believe in very strongly as well. I think what we will see, agents started about 2 years ago as a technology, but it's getting mainstream now. And what agents can do, along with the humans at the core, is to actually create that autonomous enterprise. We all have work that's complex, that's repetitive, that's it's just full of drudgery, and you're still not getting it right. I think many of those things will get a lot easier this year. So I really do see that the beginning of the autonomous enterprise, a truly autonomous enterprise, with agents and humans working together, happening in 2026.
That's interesting, and we're aligned on that.
Yeah.
So what does that mean to workforces, not only at NTT Data, but maybe more importantly at your clients, as the drudgery becomes autonomous, and then what happens to all these people that get to do something different?
Absolutely. I think the thing is, what has happened is, I'll give you a couple of examples, which is what we're working on. So, there is a process called the bank guarantee process in banking. Any time you have especially in supply chains, when you buy products from overseas, you've got to provide a bank guarantee that you'll get paid, essentially. And this process, depending on which part of the world you're in, can take, has 17 steps, but can take up to 35 days. And it's always been like this, because it's a standard operating procedure, it's always been the same. But this delays a lot of things, especially in a dynamic world, there's a lot of delay. Now, this has been designed because it's been designed for people to do tasks, right, in sequence. Now with agents, what you find is we can do a lot of these things in parallel. A lot of these things do not require a human intervention. Maybe if you do a credit check, you need a person to do it, but many of the KYC or getting the data, et cetera, can be done. So once you do this in parallel, you can shrink it to 5 days. Now what that means is we can do a lot more. I think what we need to do is, instead of running processes, we need to envision processes, right? Think about why, and this process has been the same process, Paul, for 25 years,
So people
it's not
thought it was
thought it is normal.
Yeah,
and now you can say, okay, I can do this differently, I can do this faster, I can do this better, I can do this cheaper. And the possibilities, there is this data that about $4 trillion of waste happens in the US economy every year, simply because we have inefficient processes and systems. Now, yes, some of that, jokingly does lead to jobs, I get that. But in the end, it impacts customer experience, it impacts a lot of things. So we do believe that the big difference that is going to come is where humans kind of envision things, you lead a lot more creativity, which requires in-depth knowledge of people, of processes, et cetera. You can never forget the human element, but doing tasks will not be, we will all do tasks along with agents.
I love that. That's just, I don't know that much about the banking guarantee process, but just hearing you talk, it's just another example of AI breaking paradigms of what was normal process that you couldn't really imagine that it would be different, and now it's all different.
Yeah, absolutely. And in regulated industries, it almost became like, this is the only way it can happen. And then you're looking at it. We're doing loan processing as well, which is even more, sort of from a regulatory perspective, because a lot of consumer loans, et cetera, there's a lot of eyes on this. But it's a difficult process. And I keep saying, banks traditionally thought they were, for example, you want to buy a home, they thought they were in the mortgage business. But no, they're in the business of helping you buy a home. Nobody gets up and says, I'm going to get a mortgage. They want to get up and say, I want to buy a home. And now you can make this entire process easier, like searching for homes, getting the surveys done, putting bids in. And banks can help with this entire process. You don't have to just be
Let's build on that, because we all get wrapped around AI, and at some point it feels like we're doing AI for AI's sake. So talk a little bit more about how you're dealing with clients, and I'm sure the clients come to NTT Data and say, I need AI, and how do you convert that into business problem solutions?
No, actually, it's a great question, Paul. In fact, one of the things, lots of boards have just mandated, especially CIOs, that we need to use AI. But I think, it's like, sometimes it's like, it's like a hammer looking for every nail that it can find. And but we believe that I think in every enterprise, when you look at what's, where are, especially problems that have existed for a long, long time, but not yet been solved. I keep, the example I take is the contact center example, So what's a surprising fact is, about 25 to 30 million people work in contact centers. That's more than the number of people in IT, by the way, right? I mean, it includes people doing service desk and help desk. But no one's contact center experience is great, right? Like it's an industry which is historically low NPS. And then you look at this and say, why? Why is this the case? And it's because, systems are complex, processes are complex. There's a lot of people turnover in this business. It tends to be that kind of, and the nature of that business is a bit different. So what we're saying is that now we want to solve this problem differently. Agents can help in a big way. And we're not talking about just them taking call resolution and things like that, but actually sensing, what's the reason behind this call? How can, what's going on with the person there? Can I help them in a different way? And bringing up data. Now, I take this example. We have a claims contact center work that we're doing with an existing client. And God forbid if someone is in an accident, and you usually make a call. You don't really go to an app to make a call to say, hey, I'm in an accident. I need to do something about this. And then the contact center representative is actually struggling to figure out who you are, right? They are like, okay, I need to validate you, look up in a system, authenticate you. And you're like in the midst of a road potentially. It's just, but what you can do, especially because you're calling from your phone, a lot of phone, you can use data from the phone to authenticate much faster, much better, especially, you can do that. Agents can do that. The person can be talking to you while the authentication is going on, saying, how are you doing? I hope you're not injured. Can I call you an ambulance? All the things that you can do, which you cannot do because you're doing your validation kind of work, right? And then, as you can imagine, I could go on and on. The whole process gets a lot smoother where somebody's been cared for rather than, oh, I filed a claim, right? And I think that is where the difference is.
Gives me a lot of hope. Now, I know I haven't been injured, but I get stuck in phone trees and I'm screaming representative over and over again.
Exactly.
Now, beyond the technology of AI, talk about whether it's governance or workforce change. Sure. What are the other elements around the technology that are crucial for AI to really drive successful business outcomes?
No, I think the governance aspects are going to be critical. We at NTT Data, we say we're the company of responsible innovation, always been this way. And I think responsible AI needs, there's still a lot of work to be done there. It still has bias in it, it still hallucinates, it makes errors, and some of this is to be expected in any technology that is maturing over a period of time. But governance is critical, and I think oversight is critical. I think here when we look at especially, a lot of it is seen from a technology lens, but I think we should see this in all its lenses. What's the people governance model here? What's the process governance? What's the technology?
It all goes hand in glove.
All hand in glove. And frankly, I would say AI governance should be like a board level topic to know that, how are we actually governing the use of this technology.
Okay. Back to the point you were making about autonomous enterprise, and let's talk about pricing, because we have these different layer pricing models. NTT Data has been pricing, and the whole industry has been pricing based on standard models for decades, really, time and materials and different other variations. So how is AI driving paradigm shifts in how you set pricing for clients? How does that work?
No, I think we strongly believe that the FTE model that has been the dominant model when it comes to every aspect, whether it's estimation, whether it's pricing, whether it's even execution. That's what clients have looked for. That's what providers have traditionally focused on. I think that model can no longer continue, or will no longer continue, because once you're looking at saying how do humans and agents work together, the model has to change. And as I said, if you're solving problems, process problems, and like I talked about the bank guarantee problem or the loan processing problem, I think, or the contact center problem, we believe that you have to actually look at those outcomes and price for those outcomes, because that's the only way to guarantee that the technology is end to end and it exists. So a client can feel confident that yes, I am going to get the cost savings, or I'm going to get a better advantage, or I'm going to get better speed to market because it's committed in that fashion. So we are seeing a lot more, outcome-based pricing. On outsourcing, we are just bidding these deals and giving clients the savings up front, and then taking on the heavy lift of, say, making sure that we
And
find a way
it'll
to
vary
deliver it.
it's graduated depending on the level of AI that's deployed at different.
Exactly, and we think, I think some of this is, yes, as a leader, sometimes you take a commercial call as well, but we know that over the next 3 to 5 years, which is the duration of most contracts, we know that this technology will get smarter, faster, better, and we can see a way. But the important thing is that clients should not be, they should get the outcomes, they should get that cost reduction, they should not be worried about like, okay, well, in the FTE model, you actually transferred a lot more risk to the client, frankly. In this model, you take on a lot more risk, and I think that's the difference.
That makes sense. Okay. Entity Data has a whole set of ecosystem partners.
Yeah.
It could be hyperscalers, it could be software vendors, ISG, it
course.
could be startups, but AI probably, I'm assuming, reshapes the makeup of your partner ecosystem. So talk a little bit about what's happening there.
Absolutely. In fact, Paul, one of the things I joined 11 months ago, and I'm having a great time at NTT Data. We actually had only 3 global partnerships, and we had signed a lot of local regional partnerships. So, now what we've got by the end of this year, we'll have about 10 global partnerships, and it's been moved right. But the reason, when some people ask me how are things moving so quickly here, I was like, they want to work with us because I think they have the tech, but they really lack domain expertise, in some cases the process expertise, in some cases, just an understanding of how the legacy world works. So NVIDIA is a great example. They are, I think, the company of physical AI. Some really wonderful products are there, like Omniverse, et cetera. So we're creating digital twins of factories. But how we understand a shop floor in an automotive company is at a different level to what they do. They can use cameras and scan it, but they will still not understand why something happens in the way it does. So they see these partnerships as super critical to say, okay, if you're going to make this technology work in the real world, we really need you to work with us. And part of that is actually, us working with the clients, but also maturing the technology. It's, I keep saying this to all my salespeople, that if we're in a room where it's just us and the client, we're in the wrong room. There has to be an ecosystem partner in that room, because without that, you're not getting anything done.
Let's pull on that thread a little bit more. You were talking about specific vertical industries.
Yeah.
So talk about how AI is used to drive even more specific industry solutions versus a more horizontal solution.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I talked to you about some of the banking examples I gave you, but I think this is where, in design thinking world, there are these wicked problems, right? These problems that have existed for a long, long time. Fin crime is a classic example, right? We've had all sorts of technology, but yet there is, whether it's fraud, or whether it's money laundering, all of this still continues, But I think the thing there is, how do we find a solution that actually addresses the root problems that are there, And I think with AI, we have that technology now. Today, the technology exists to solve problems that you couldn't solve before, like the contact center example I gave you. I think some of these things, we want to really revisit why, like production scheduling. Why does it take 4 weeks for a factory to figure out what to produce? Especially in a dynamic world, pricing. It's all, a lot of these things are very linear, and they've been built on limitations that exist in the people process systems world today.
Yeah.
AI will just blow that open.
Right.
So I keep saying that, you have to think about the problems you want to solve. People keep saying, what can the technology be used for? I was like, leave that aside.
Business problem.
Yeah, figure out what's your biggest business
Pain
problems that you
points.
can, and then throw it at, and then we'll figure this out. In fact, when I was at OpenAI, I spent some time in California, and I mean, they have OpenAI has an enterprise, business, and they're really looking to do more there. Some of it is really scary because they're coming after the work that IT services companies do. But they were asking me the same thing. So they give us some of your biggest problems that you're solving for clients, and let's do this together. So I mean, we're talking about so the best companies in the world working on this, and we solve these problems. I think and make all the consumers' lives a little easier, and that should be our goal.
That's fantastic. And one last question. Talk about your workforce and how do they get reskilled and retrained and incented to go all in to the extent that you need them to change their skills and capabilities in this new world.
Absolutely. I think the first and foremost, our global CEO, Abhijit Dubey, is also our chief AI officer. So, he wears two hats, and that's critical. That's the, strongest message you can send to the organization as to how important this is. Then we have a program. It's the green belt, yellow belt, black belt program, which is for every employee. All 190,000 employees have to go through this. In addition to that, what I've done is also we've created an executive learning module as well. Because I hate to say it, but sometimes people do use ChatGPT or Gemini as like almost like a search engine, right? And I think it's capable of a lot more than that. Especially as you learn to work with it in tasks, and you can build small agents for yourself and things like that. It improves personal productivity, but frankly, I think what it does is it makes us more familiar with the technology, and therefore, when you're having conversations with clients, it's much easier. So, address it at all levels, at the board level, at all the employees, and then make sure that we really use it on a day-to-day basis.
You had me at the beginning of, I haven't heard of a CEO also being the chief AI officer. That's amazing. Well, this has been a great conversation. Thank you. And, what strikes me as a theme is even though in this ever-changing world of AI, the technology is crucial, but there's so much more around the technology that has to come together for it to be successful. And as leaders look to navigate this moment, it's not so much about whether to invest in AI, obviously, but it's where to invest so you can change your operating model, change your decision-making, change your organization. So thank you so much, Sudhir, for your perspective and experience. I know our audience will find this very refreshing, practical, and valuable. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Always a pleasure. Thank you.